Good morning and welcome back. There's been a bit of a lag in me putting videos out. I've been in Melbourne helping a relative after a hospital visit. While I was down there, I did take the opportunity to pick up this radio. Before we get started on the radio, can I just say thank you for the people that have contributed to buy me a coffee. I've said many times I'm not in this to make money, but it does help to offset the costs of running the channel. So thank you very much. I very much appreciate it. Alright, onto the radio. This is an EKCO radio. It's a U245. It's out of 1955, I believe, and it's made by EKCO in England. I would assume this has been bought over with someone that's immigrated to Australia. The brand name of the radio is EKCO. It's not that type of EKCO. It's named after the man that started the company, and his name was Eric Kirkham Cole. So he's just used his initials, and he's come up with the name EKCO, and that's pretty smart. I haven't had a chance to look at this radio very much. I've just taken it out of the car, really, and I've downloaded the service manual, so I've got that. Looking around, I can see the grill cloth is sort of pulled in different directions. Hopefully I can fix that. The little E for EKCO is crooked. It's also got a chip out of it. The dial looks nice and clear. The writing's clear. It's all there, I think. And the wave change switch is missing. There should be something sticking out there, I assume. 3D printer, maybe. All right, we'll have a look in a minute. The case is good. A bit of scratching here, I can see. The top looks good, and it's a bit dirty, but it'll clean up all right. The back looks really good, except it's got all this damage to it up the top here. So I'll have to see what we can do there. That's unusual because the dropper resistor and all the heat is over here. I can see it. So you'd think the damage would be up here, but it's not. It's over there. Someone's grabbed it and put their hand through it, I assume. So I'll have to see if I can repair that. That's enough looking around. I'll take the screws out and have a look inside. Here's the inside. I'll take it out of the case in a second. I'll just have a quick look around. Good layer of dust on it, so it means that nobody's played with it for a while. You can probably see it's got rim lock valves. That was typical for EKCO and Bush and the other English manufacturers. Capacitor adjustment on the loopstick antenna. There's a 4 by 7 inch speaker there, and it should sound pretty good, I would think. I'll take the chassis out and I'll have a look at it. I wasn't going to show taking the chassis out, but this is a hot chassis set, so they've concealed the screws behind this little cover. I was surprised to see the screws there, but that wasn't the real screws. Anyway, I'll continue taking this out. I've got it out of its case. Let's have a quick look at the top again. Here's the across the line capacitor. It's coming off the power switch. It's actually going to chassis, which is a bit confusing, but it's leaked. The insides have leaked out, so it's under a lot of stress there. Here's the dropping resistor here. It has tappings on the side here for different voltage inputs. It's set to 230, 250. There's 110, 120. So the dropping resistor drops the voltages in the UK or the Europe from 240, 220 down to 110, so it can operate like an American AC/DC set. This takes a lot of current through here. They get very hot. It has another resistor tacked on the back here. I don't know if that's part of the original setup or not. Here's the bottom of it. It looks very original. I can't see any replacement parts in here at all. So it looks similar to when it came out of the factory. One thing I did find when I pulled it out of the case was this switch, which is the wave switch, so I don't have to print one. Here's the wave change switch, and it's mounted vertically in the chassis. That would naturally attach there, and you would change the band, but you'll have to rebuild that somehow. Here's the power lead that's coming in. It's been affected by something. I don't know if it's heat or not. It's stopped right there. I thought it had, a tape around it, but it's, I don't know, it's melted onto the inside of the case as well. The chap I bought it off said this was running, and he offered to plug it in while I was there, but I said, no, don't bother, thanks. I'll wait till I get home. I normally power these up in a controlled environment, but I'm a little reluctant with this one. I need to locate the so-called death cap. That across the line cap needs to be replaced or at least cut out before I put power on it. And just looking at this now, this capacitor has been replaced. That's not an original capacitor, of course. These are odd looking resistors. That's a 10K, that one. I'm assuming it's a resistor. Yeah, it's got to be a resistor. I haven't seen anything like that before. There are signs that this radio has been in a smoker's house. It's got tar. I got hauled over the virtual coals last time for calling it nicotine, when in fact it's the tar. Let me do some more checking on the chassis here, and I'll just see if it is safe to power it up. I looked earlier at the across the line capacitor that seems to be going to ground, But shown in the schematic here is obviously going across the line. So hopefully the positive or the active is coming in here and goes off to the rectifier, goes through the valve string and presents here. This is the death cap, or the one that goes to ground, earth. Now by the time it gets here, it shouldn't have any massive amount of voltage in there, but if you have the positive or the active connected to this side and that capacitor fails, you've now got active or positive at the earth point, and it's just waiting for you to go and find another earth. This line along here I think is the B minus. Here's the B plus coming off the rectifier, filters, and then it goes up here and supplies the various areas that it needs to supply. This is across the line capacitor. Don't be confused, it's connected there alright, but here it's going to the chassis. Turns out it's not. Here's the across the line capacitor, and I thought it was going to the metal chassis here under this wax, but it's not. It's going to one of these pins, and these pins are a little bit tricky. Here's the little pins going from the top of the chassis to the bottom. I thought they were going straight through in this metal chassis, but they're not, they're insulated. So these are just little attachment pins. It's very clever. This is the bottom of the pin that capacitor is attached to, and it's going over here to the common on the filter capacitor. Here's the commons for those two filter capacitors. Here's the across the line capacitor, so yeah, they're all in the same line. It had me fooled there for a minute, but once I worked out what those pins were doing, it's okay. This is the line to chassis cap, or the death cap if you want to call it that. I've replaced it with a Y safety cap. This cord here, it's actually got something on it. It's got a rubber compound or something's been put on it. So the actual wiring is fine. So I'm okay with that. Here's the across the line cap. I'm just going to cut it out of the circuit. It's obviously under distress, so I'm not going to run it. But I'll replace that later. I've got X safety caps as well. I've checked the polarity of the power cord. I've got the shop speakers on. I've got the supply here on. It's got 230 volts on it, 237. Just going to put some power on. We'll see what it does. Nothing at all. Turn it on. I haven't got an antenna. Oh, there it is. It's there. It's working.
Rendell, Jess Rendell, about the weather.
Got a bit of hum there. And that hum's going away when it's off the station. Now there should be a station about here. It's not there.
A man in Brisbane.
I think that's the ABC station, and that should be up here somewhere. It's in the wrong place. Now that's 4KQ, and that should be up here somewhere. So the alignment's out on it, or the RF alignment's out. Oops.
Associated with this activity in terms of human life.
Yeah, so that's 4BH. That should be here somewhere, or up here even. Alright, so it's got some problems. Now I've set my little meter up here. I'm measuring the bias on the output valve, so we make sure we don't fry it. But there it is there, 1.5 volts. That doesn't seem enough. And it doesn't sound enough with the radio. The radio's not very clear. Alright, so a couple little problems, but it does work, so that's all I really wanted to know. I've just put that on a quiet part of the dial, and there's virtually no hum in it. So the filter cap seems to be working alright. I will replace the filter caps though. They're 65 odd years old, so I'm not leaving those in there. Let's go to full power and see what it does. Right, I got it on 235 volts.
My name's Steve Austin. It's 20 minutes to 6. Let's look at matters of state now with two experienced players.
Yeah. Alright, as I said, I'll need more work. So what I'm going to do first is clean it, because there's no point trying to work around dirt. I don't know if I mentioned this, there's no dial light on this thing. They must have just given up. There's the dropper resistor. I'll just... yeah, you can't hang on to it. So it's pretty warm, it's not too bad. I'm out in my little workshop again. I should have taken these valves out before I came out here. As I said before, these are rim lock valves and they've got a spring around them and a little glass pip on the side of the valve. I'm going to let the spring go so that it doesn't impede the pip when I try and pull it out. There you go. So there's the little pip. Sometimes the springs can be a bit strong and take that off on these glass ones. From what I read, these valves were to stop the valves popping out of their sockets on military craft like Navy ships and aeroplanes. I'll just do this one. I think I read that on Wikipedia, so it's as accurate as Wikipedia can be. I've got my compressed air gun here. I've got a mask on and I'm just going to try and blow the dust off here. I've got some wax and grease remover here. I'm just going to see if that works on these radios or not. They seem to be covered in, well, wax and grease a lot of time, or the tar from cigarettes. That's cleaning it up well, isn't it? Oh, that looks good. That is cleaned up really good. Look at that. It's like new. Alright, I'm going to turn the camera off. I'll finish cleaning this. I'll put my workshop radio on and just relax. The wife's made me a coffee, so I'll just sit here and slowly clean this up. Okay, well, I've done that. I've spent quite a few hours on this. Every time I think it'll take 5 minutes. It takes 2 hours. It wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be, and I used a whole range of cleaning materials, cloths and solvents to try and clean it off, but it's come up okay. This is off the on-off switch and it tells you when the radio's on. That's about all, and the little dial pointer. I've got to paint those and that'll be it, and I'm going in for the night, and I'll attack the rest of it in the morning. So until then, good night. Good morning, I'm back at my little service desk again. I've got the radio here. I've put all the valves back in. I cleaned them up, cleaned the bases, put some contact cleaner into the sockets, so they should be okay. I've also put the dial indicator back on and the on-off indicator plate. I cleaned this rough surface here. It's a sort of a wrinkle finish. I cleaned it with a toothbrush and some household cleaner, and that's come up very good. While I was cleaning all this, I was using brushes and getting into places, and I might have knocked or broken something. I was very careful, but you know, it's always a possibility. So I'm just going to put power on before I do anything else to make sure it's still at the same working level it was before I played around with it. So I've got the power on. Turn it on here. Before I cleaned it, this tuning gang was very dirty, and I don't know if that would affect the capacitance of it and move the stations around a bit. It seems a bit far-fetched, but there was mention of it a couple of times on other videos, so I'll just see if it has made a difference. The sound's coming up now.
The world's highest daily death tally yesterday, 314,000 new infections. Most hospitals are full and oxygen supplies are running out.
Alright, it's exactly the same. That station there should be well over here somewhere. So the capacitor's half open and it's getting a station of about 690 odd. So it's which way out. Alright, we'll look at that later. In the meantime, I've got some things to do to it. Yesterday when I was cleaning, I cut that across the line capacitor out. I've got some 2X rated X capacitors. I'll fit one of those in there. Now the wires on the dropper resistor get pretty much heat affected after a while, and the solder's generally cracked. That one looks alright, but the little tag that's bolting on there, because you move this bolt up and down to get the different voltages, this tag here is loose, so all this needs to be checked. I might replace this wire. These wires are carrying the high voltage from the dropper resistor, and there used to be a grommet here, so I'll replace that. So I'll fix all that up, I'll come back and then we'll have a look underneath the chassis itself. That's all done, the across the line capacitor's in. I've put a new silicon covered wire in to get the power up to the dropper resistor. This green resistor at the back here is a repair. This section of this dropper resistor is open circuit, it's 200 ohms, so all they've done is replace it with another 200 ohm resistor at the back. I'm happy with all this now. I'm going to flip it over and we'll see what needs to be done underneath. Alright, here's the bottom view. There's the big filter capacitor. I've got to replace these wax paper capacitors here. I'll replace that electrolytic. Now the problem I've got is what to put in here. These are 50 microfarad each, the capacitors in the filter. There's two. I've got two axials here, but they're nearly as big as the radio. If I put these in, I'm not sure what to do. I've got these 200 volt ones, but they're running a bit close to the running voltage of the circuit around here. Now I've got these other radial type capacitors. I've ordered some more. They're the same diameter, a bit shorter though, so maybe they will fit in the can. They might have to stick out the end there a bit. But I think the first thing I'm going to do is get that can out of there and see what I'm working with. I'll snip off the terminals, then I don't have to worry about the wiring. Alright. The capacitor is just held there by little fingers that they've pressed into the chassis, so I'll just push it out from the back. He says. Okay, I can't I can't move it, so I'm going to have to. It is moving. It is moving. It's very tight though. I just have to keep working at it. There it goes. Oh, he says. There we go. There is 350 volts. It's 50 UF and oh, it's only 20. Oh, that makes it easier. All right, I'll work with that. That's good. I'll be able to get them in now. I'm out in the workshop again, and I'm just going to drill the center of this capacitor out. So the inside stuffing of the capacitor's let go. I should be able to pull that out with some pliers. Alright, that's all done. I've cleaned all the inside out. I had a bit of a tar substance in there. I heated it and used that tar and wax remover on a bit of rag and it came out very easily. So yeah, that's perfect. I just ducked down to the electronics shop. I bought two 10 microfarad capacitors and a 47. I'll join the two 10s to make 20. I've also mounted a tag strip onto a piece of board. This is high temperature board. I'll pass the leads through here from the capacitors and attach them to the tag strip. And that assembly should fit in the top of this capacitor here. Now, I do have one problem, and that is that I can't assemble all this first and get it in past the rim of this can. So I'm going to have to assemble it with the capacitors inside the can and try and wire them up. So it's like assembling a ship in a bottle, I think. Okay, I'm going to start assembling it now. Okay, that's done, and it's come up okay. It's not bad. Bit messy with the adhesive there. I matched the heat shrink here to the colours on the front of the can, so the 50 is red and the 20 is yellow, and I checked that, so I'm happy. I'll set this aside to wait for that adhesive to dry completely, and I'll move on to something else in the meantime. While I'm in the mood for making capacitors, this guy here goes from the wiper to the preamp grid, and it's got a shield on it, and the shield is attached to ground. Now I assume they've done that because it's close to all this high voltage AC stuff around here. It doesn't show this having a shield on my schematic that I've got, but I'm going to try and do it. If they've put it on there, they've probably done it for a reason. These would have been more expensive than a standard capacitor, so they must have done it for a reason. So I'm going to try and emulate that. Here's the capacitor I've got to use. It's a 0.01, so it'll be a 103, that's right. I've got a bit of shielding off some coax, and I wondered if I could push it together enough to get it over there and then use that as the shield. Now, it won't be 100% coverage, but I think Faraday caging will take effect and it'll shield it. So I've been trying to stretch it out to make it fit. So I'm going to cut that end off. I think a pair of scissors will do it. There we go. I finally got it in there. Took a bit of effort though. Now I just want to try and stretch it onto the capacitor. And now I'll try and trim it. It's going to want to fall apart. Alright, that's one end. It's not quite as neat as I'd hoped. It's tending to unravel, so I'm going to glue it together. I can't solder it. I've got some nail polish here. Alright, I'll do the other end. Before I seal this end up, I'm going to pass a bit of wire underneath if I can. Okay, that's all the way up. And I'll just put some nail polish on that again. Alright, I'll let that dry. I've made a little label to put over the top, and then I'll put some heat shrink to hold it. So just let me glue that on there first, and then I'll heat shrink it. There's a little sticker glued on. I only put the value on there. I didn't put any brands or anything on it. Alright, I'll just heat shrink that on. There it is, all done. I don't know how well it's going to shield anything, but well, we'll see how it goes. I could have got some aluminium tape, but I'd have to go down to the electronics shop again, and I just came back from there, so I don't want to go back. So I'll see how that goes. If there's a problem, we'll have to redo it. Alright, while those two dry, I've got some capacitors down here to replace. There's all these paper ones up this end, of course, which have got to go. There's an odd one there. I'm not sure what that is. I'll have to look at that one. A couple of little ones here. These seem to be plastic with a paper wrap on them, so I'm not sure what they are either. Another one up here. So there's quite a number to do. There's a metal one in here somewhere. There it is. So not sure what that one's doing either. And when I come back, I'll refit this big filter capacitor in this little guy here. I've replaced all those capacitors now. I checked all the resistors as I went through. They were all good. There was not a faulty resistor in there. There was a floating connection in the middle here with a big blob of solder on it. I put a tag strip in there and mounted everything on there. The next thing to do is put this capacitor in. Here it is. I marked on the chassis yellow and red, so that's got to go that way. And I orientated the text so it was the same way as it was when I took it out. So it should go across like that. It's got to come in from this side. So I'm just going to bend these out of the way. Alright, let's have a go. I've put the phenolic sheet in first. I'm not quite sure how all this works. About there somewhere. Yikes. jolly. Alright, it looks like the sheet started to move with it, so I've got to go another idea here. I've super glued the little sheet on there now, so maybe it'll stay there while I get it in. Okay. Alright, so just a matter of putting the wires back again. I'll have to make sure I put them in the right place, but yeah, that should be alright. Alright, I'll do that. All those wires are connected onto the tab strip, and I replaced the little shielded capacitor that I made. Something I didn't mention before was the capacitor here that goes to the antenna. That's a Y-type capacitor as well. Here's the casualty list for the capacitors I removed. What I need to do now is flip it over again, and I will test it and see if it still works. Everything's set, dim bulb, I'll see what happens. That all looks about normal.
A list of players who,
you know, will not be subject to HIO because
measured to be too big. Yeah.
Okay, so we go back to the problem of Harry Grant. He gets knocked out basically.
Alright, it's still working exactly the same. I don't think it's made any difference changing any of those components. Now the stations aren't very clear, and it's got that hum behind the ABC station. What I'm going to do is check these two IF cans, make sure they're aligned, and then I'll do some troubleshooting if that doesn't sort it out. But yeah, it doesn't seem to be working properly. I've set this up now to check the alignment. The IF alignment on this is 470. There's two alignment screws on the bottom, one's there and the other one's up here. There's two on the top, of course, and they're on top of the cans. I've got my meter set up here, ready to go. It's connected to the plate of the output valve. I'll just turn the speaker on. I've got to mesh this tuner here. And there's the signal. I'll turn that speaker off. Alright. Let's have a go at adjusting it. Sounds like it's alright actually. That's one. All right, I'll do the bottom ones. That's about right. Okay, I got something out of all of those. I always do them 2, 3, 4 times to make sure they are right, because they do affect each other. Oh, that one's okay. That one's okay. That one's okay, and the last one here. Oh. Well, they all were slightly out, so let's hope that picks up the quality of the signal at least. The radio's warmed up. We'll see. I don't expect any great difference.
We Queenslanders love it. You keep worrying about that and we'll keep planning on continuing Origin success. Nice to think.
Yeah.
Ross. Just heard from Jared that you Queenslanders don't want to worry about that yet. Yep.
That buzzing noise, I'll take the antenna off.
To you three, how would you all do as coaches? You call the game and comment on the play. Could you do the same as coaches? I could not.
Yeah, absolutely. Be fun.
Right, that sounds perfectly normal with that antenna off, so whether that's feeding the noise in, I don't know. I will complete the RF alignment now, so I'll just stand it all up and I'll come back. I'm all set. I've got the signal generator on 600, and that should align with 500 meters. The oscillator adjustment is here, so I'll just bring it up to 500. I'll turn the sound off. That's it there. I've set the meter halfway there, so I'll just tune it and get maximum signal and see if we're still on the 500. It's about there somewhere. And from my angle, it's spot on in the middle of 500. Here's the antenna coil. A bit hard to see down here. Just try and adjust that. About there seems to be about right. I need to tune the radio to 250 meters. I'm actually doing this backwards to what the schematic says, but that'll be okay. So 250 meters, about there somewhere. I've got the generator on 1200 kilocycles. That equals 250 meters apparently. I put the sound back on. I like a bit of feedback when I'm doing these ones. I'm adjusting the trimmer on the oscillator capacitor. I've got the alignment instructions here. I'm not just making this up. And that's it there. Okay. Now the next one is to go to 225, so I guess it's halfway between there. There it is. I've set the generator to 1333. I'm adjusting the other trimmer. This is for the antenna. Oh. I think that's about it there. Alright, done. So I'll go back down, do the 500 again, make sure that's okay. Now I came down to check the 500 again, and it's way down here. I've got the generator set on 600, it should line up here. And I thought it did when I did it before. So I'm not sure what's going on there. Alright, I'll adjust it again, we'll see if I can bring it back. Alright, I'm back at 250 meters on the scale, 1200 on the generator. I will put the sound on. There is nothing there. Alright, I'm going to go back, check it again. If it's okay, we'll move on to the next bit. If it's not, I'll show you what's going on. Okay, I've got it sorted. It worked perfectly the next time I did it. I went back to the 500 meters and adjusted it. Went back to the 250 and it was perfect. So that's alright. I then went back on to the 225 and adjusted the antenna trimmer. Now to set the long wave, they generally just go in the center somewhere and make sure it's centered in the middle. That's what you can do. Now you can just see my frequency meter down here. It's 187 kilohertz. I'll put the speaker on. I've got it set to long wave, and I'll just bring down the dial here. That's about there. That's 16, so that's perfect. The only adjustment at this point for long wave is to adjust the antenna coil and the little trimmer here. They're both sealed in position, so I'm not going to worry about them. So I'm happy with the alignment now. I think that's about it for the day. It's getting a bit late. Tomorrow I might have a look at this wave change switch and see if I can rebuild this area here. I've got a couple of ideas. One of them's fairly interesting, so I'll see how that goes. So until then, have a good evening, and I'll see you in the morning. Good morning, I'm back. I was going to have a look at this wave change switch lever. Here's the switch here. It's got a flat on the side, and here's the lever for it. Here's the lever for the switch, and it's shortened off. It used to be about that long there. That's all broken away, and it almost looks like it's dissolved or something. Not sure what's happened to it. Anyway, it's fairly solid around this side, this boss that's sitting here now. There's a bit here that's cracked out, so that's just hanging on by a little bit of plastic there. So what I'm thinking of doing is cleaning this up and clean up around here. I can glue that missing bit back in with some JB Weld. So what I thought I'd do is machine up an aluminium boss to go over this boss, and then thin it down and put a grub screw in there. So just make it big enough to go around there, drill a 1/4 inch hole for the shaft, and put a grub screw through the side. I'm out in the workshop and I've cleaned this up as best I can. Here's the piece that's loose, and I will glue that back in. It seems to have some sort of film on the outside, so I'll glue it and then just clean it up. Now I've got a bit of alley round stock. I'm going to drill this out to the outer diameter of here, and then I will put a 1/4 inch hole down one end and a grub screw through, as I said, and that'll pick up the shaft. I hope so. It'll be about that long. Just cut it off there and put a grub screw in. Easy. This will be the end that goes over the switch shaft, so I will machine this down to, I don't know, maybe 3/8 of an inch or 10 mil, 11 mil, something like that. Now I've mounted my work in the vise here. I'm going to drill and tap a hole in it. Just going to run a tap through it. I'll put the grub screw in. There we go. Alright, so that's come up good. Now I'll glue that on there, and then this will go on the shaft. I've coated this with JB Weld and stick it together. There we go. That looks good. I'll clean all that excess up in there. There's probably some gone in the hole. I'll get that out of there. But that should be okay, I think. I spent a bit of time this morning trying to find the cause of that modulation hum when the antenna's connected. I tested all the lower value capacitors that I didn't replace. There was only a couple of micas which I checked, mainly these little wax covered flat capacitors, and they're all fine. They were all spot on. But then I took the radio outside and connected it to my outside antenna I've got out there, and it worked perfectly. There was nothing wrong with it. It operated very well. I think it just didn't like the antenna that I got in the house. It gets a lot of noise on that, so that's maybe what it was doing. I'm not sure, but as I said, outside it worked beautifully. So I'm going to leave this as it is at the moment, and I'm going to have a look at the case and particularly the speaker. Here's the speaker inside the case. I'll take this entire baffle off and then the speaker, and we'll see what it looks like. I haven't seen it. It looks alright from here. Now I've taken the baffle out. The speaker's still on the back. This cloth here is all skew with, and it's glued down. No, it's not. It's not. Well, it was glued down. It's not anymore. So there's the speaker. The speaker looks alright. Now that little echo symbol is just moulded onto the back, or melted I should say. So I'll probably scrape that off, and then I can remove that and remove the cloth. Up. Okay. Alright, that can come off now. There we go. Alright, I'll flip it over. I'll get these nuts and bolts out. Here's the speaker. It looks very nice. Very good condition. No marks, nothing. Looks good. I'll connect it to the radio. I'll see if it works. There it is. I've got it on. Sounds alright. Now I can't play that song too long. This is normally a talking station. It's got music on. Oh, there it is.
Brisbane and Queensland, it's just gone 1:30. If you were wondering what's happening in the world today, wonder no more. The wonderful Matt Wordsworth is going to walk you through some of the big news stories in a moment, making sense of the world and also how it affects you here in Queensland. But if you're a loyal listener of the program, you'll know there's something I like to do before we catch up with Matt on a Monday.
Okay. That sounds fine. It's all tinny because it's out of its case, but it sounds good. There's no worries with that. In that case, I'll move on to the case. The radio and speaker's okay, so I'm going to polish this case. I'll give it a wash first, then I'll take it out to my workshop and we'll have a look at it there. I've washed it in the trough and it's come up okay. It's not too bad actually. It had a film on it here and I used a scour and some liquid abrasive cleaner and it's come off alright. It's got the mandatory paint spots on it. So scratches there, I will sand them out with wet and dry paper, maybe about P800. And they should come out. They're fairly deep. They should come out. I won't go too far. If they won't come out, I'll live with it. Some more marks there. This is the other end. It looks alright. I can't see anything there. What I'll do first is use a light automotive polish just to get the oxidation off. Then Brasso, and then I might put some of my Canaba wax on. I'll start working on these scratches. I've got some P800. That's the European standard. This is wet and dry. So just see what it does. These scratches are pretty deep, so I'm not confident of getting them out completely. I love the smell of formaldehyde in the morning. Alright, I don't think I'm going to be able to get this out. I don't want to go through the crust of the Bakelite into the soft interior. So I don't want to go too far. I'll just work it a bit more. I think I'm okay to do that. I think I'm going to have to live with some scratches on there. There's the deep bit in there. I can't get rid of that. There's another bit there I can't get rid of. This scratch is still all the way along here. I'm going to leave it like that. I'm not going to go any further than that. It should look alright. Where I've sanded it, I'm going to use a coarser automotive polish. This is a cut and polish, just to get rid of the sanding marks. Here's a bit of brown wood tint here, or wood stain. I'm just going to paint these. Oops. And just darken it up so it doesn't stand out as much. Looks like it's going to work. It's made a little smiley face. That's dry. I've rubbed off the excess. I don't know if it's made any difference to it or not. This is a less coarse cutting compound. And I've got some Brasso here. I'm hoping this comes up alright. I hope I haven't cut through too much of the Bakelite. There it is with the Brasso on it. It's come up okay. It looks a bit sort of lighter there where I have sanded it. I've got another coat I'm going to put on it and that should bring that back. But that's the best I can do. It's still got the scratches in it. Putting the wood dye on it didn't seem to do much. So I'm going to do the rest of the cabinet with the finer car polish and then the Brasso. Then we'll come back and I'll try another coat on top of here with the Canaba wax. I've put the Brasso on and it's come up pretty good. It looks alright actually. Even that area I sanded, it doesn't look too bad now. But I'm going to put some Canaba wax on. We'll see what that does. That's what I'm going to use. It's Canaba wax. It's brown, this one. It's tinted, so it's good for Bakelite as well. You just rub this on and let it set for about 10-15 minutes and then you polish it off. So I'll do the rest of the case and come back then. I've done the rest of the case. That's dried now for at least 15 minutes, so I'll just try and get it off again, which is hard work. There it is. I've left it on too long and I've got a fan running and it's blowing it off and it's dried rock hard, so I managed to get it off. Took a bit of work though, but there it is, and yeah, it looks pretty good I reckon. It looks really good. I've got to do the rest of it now. By the time I finish this, I'll have a mighty right arm. All done now, and I've got to say it looks spectacular. It's really nice. I was worried about this case because it looked so dull, but it's come out really well. There's the scratch side there. So you can still see them, of course, but gosh, they're just tiny little marks now. Yeah, very happy with that. The next thing to do is the back panel here on the radio. Someone's put their hand through it and broken it off. I'm going to glue this back on, this broken off piece. Yeah, that's a start. Then I'm going to back it with a piece of aluminium sheet. And I'm going to try and rebuild these ribs in here and see how I go with that. It's never going to look new again, but I'll give it a shot and see what we come up with. I'll come back and show you what I've done. Here's what I've done so far. I've glued this back together, and it's quite sturdy actually. I've also made up a little aluminium doubler plate, and that'll go on the back here. I'm going to glue that on, and that'll give me something to adhere the repair material to. So I'm going to JB weld that on there, and I'll come back when I'm about to do the repair. I've glued that aluminium plate to the back of the backboard, and while that's drying, I'm going to try and affix this grill cloth back onto the front board here. Now it's shrunk a little bit. It used to go to the sides, I'm assuming, but it's a bit shorter now. So I need to keep it in the centre, or it might show when I put it in the case. So I've got to centre it. Now I wondered about the hole where the EKCO logo went, but I thought what I'll do is not worry where that ends up. I'll just drill a new hole in the backboard here, and it won't matter where that ends up, so I can centre it. Now the other thing is these lines are all crooked and wavy, so I'm going to try and straighten them. So what I'm going to do is put a bit of adhesive along the bottom here and just attach the centre there, and then try and straighten these lines up as best I can and stick them down, and then perhaps work from the centre and try and straighten these lines up here. We'll see how we go. That took quite a bit of effort to get that done to that, and yeah, it's reasonably straight. It's not perfect, but it's alright. So I think the next thing I'll do is glue the centre there and straighten up the lines going this way, which aren't too bad now. Having straightened up the bottom, these aren't too bad now, they look alright. Alright, that's dried off a bit. I'll glue it down. I'm pretty happy with that. That looks pretty straight to me. Alright, that'll do. It's still got some waves in it. It's wavy out here this way, and up the other end it waves the opposite direction. So I can't actually straighten it 100%. But it looks better than it did, and if you look at it straight on, it looks fine. I need to re-drill a hole for this little EKCO logo. To refit this, I'm going to put a little dab of adhesive here to glue it onto the front there, stop it rotating. Alright, there's the front grille, all done. I'm back on this backboard again, and the adhesive's dry that's holding on this little aluminium plate, and in my quest to waste as much of my life as I can, I've sat here and made these little spacers or planks or whatever you want to call it. And now all I have to do is fill in the gaps. So I've made up a little filler here, and this is pretty much just paper mache with PVA glue holding it together, and I've coloured it with some acrylic paints that the artists use. You can get powder, but I've only got the liquid. Now I've got to mix that a bit better than that. It's still got bits of paper showing through it. Right, I've mixed that a little bit better, so all I need to do is press it in here Something like that. I'll switch to a putty knife, I think that'll be better. There we go. Alright, that'll do. I'll do the rest of them. The recipe for this mix is in the description. I've filled those up. I'm going to put some plastic wrap over the top. And then I'm going to lay a cloth on it, hoping to pick up some of the pattern. I don't think it'll go through the plastic actually, but I'll give it a go. And a bit of wood on top. And just a couple of clamps, and I'll let that sit for a few hours and we'll see what it comes out like. This has been drying overnight and I think it's been a bit of a failure. The material's shrunk. It's too dark for a start. The material's shrunk down below the level that it's supposed to be. Now I've got to try and get these little wooden pegs out. I probably should have put some sort of grease or oil or something on them. So I'm just going to try and cut them out. Well, that's one out. The material hasn't quite dried yet, but I'll keep going. So I might have to add a bit more material to it and to build it up again. And also I need to change the colour a bit. It's just way too dark. Well, it's not that bad actually. Once it's dried properly, you can cut and file that filler in there. But it's certainly low and certainly needs to be built up again. But I won't put these little pegs back in. I'll just do it manually and then clean it up. I've got everything I need to put the radio back together. Before I do, just a bit of an update on the chassis. The radio is working very well now. What it did have was a problem with the volume turned right down. You could still hear it quite loudly. And it turned out to be this UCB41, which is the detector pentode. I think the signal must have been leaking from the detector to the pentode grid. I ended up phoning a friend, Stuart at the radio club. I had already replaced this valve, tracing another problem, and then it didn't notice that it had fixed my volume problem. So anyway, he said, once you change it again. So I did, and that fixed it. Now the other problem it had was a hum when you're on the station, and I had my external antenna connected directly to the radio. Now I'd previously earthed the radio to try and get rid of the problem, and then when I connected my oscilloscope ground to the chassis, the problem went completely, the hum was gone. So once again, under the guidance from Stuart, I changed a couple of earthing capacitor values slightly and put the earth on, and the hum is gone. So the radio is working really well at the moment. It's very sensitive. I was listening to Rockhampton last night. Anyway, it's ready to go back in the case. Now, before I can put it in the case, I've got to put on my wave switch. Now, I'm not sure what the height's going to be, so I've kind of made it what it was originally, and hopefully that'll be right. I'll have to do a final adjustment when I get it in the case. Okay. That seems alright, and it's just missing this base here. Height wise there's a bit more room to go there, so it can go down a bit further, but I'll see how it fits in the case. I've got to put this volume and on-off switch indicator plate back on. I did have it on earlier, but I scratched it, so I had to take it off and repaint it. That's it. I can put everything together now. I cleaned this front panel and it's come up really nice. So that's got to go there. I've assembled the speaker onto the baffle plate, and that goes there. Now I've got all the screws for here. I'll put all those in and we'll have a look. Alright, all the screws are in. I'll turn it over and see what it looks like. Gosh, that looks really good. That front panel cleaned up beautifully. I polished it with some plastic polish, and I wiped the back with a tissue with a bit of water on it, and it had tar and years of gunk on it. The grill looks good. I soaked it in pre-wash powder and in the trough, and the dirt just virtually fell out of it. Okay, I'll put the chassis in. I've got the chassis ready, and I'll just put it in. I'll just see if that switch is going to line up. That's concerning me. Yeah. Yeah, just looking at it, it's too low, which means it needs to go on further. I'll try and get a measurement with my accurate plastic verniers here. That's just a bit more than 2 millimeters. Now, just so I'll reduce that gap there by the 2 and a bit mil. I'll use the vernier here to measure the height. That's come up at 29 millimeters. I've got 2.2 to get rid of, so I need to make it 26.8. I squared off a 1/4 inch drill and ran it right up to the plastic here, so I don't want to go any further than that. I'll go right through the plastic, and I don't want to do that. So I'll just measure it again, and that's now 27.1, so I need to get another 0.3 off, but I can get that by moving the dial glass down a bit. So I'll loosen these screws off, move this dial glass down 0.3 of a millimeter, and we'll try again. Alright, let's try that again. Oh, perfect. Yeah, that's perfect. Alright, I'll turn it over and put the screws in from the bottom to mount it. I'll solder these speaker wires on. There's plenty of solder there, I just added some flux. Alright, I'll just put the back on and we're about done. Now the back's not finished. There's the repair there. The drying time is so long that I've just run out of time, so I'm going to keep working on it. Alright, I've got power on. I'll turn it on and see what it sounds like. Yep, better put it on medium wave.
It's always a highlight, isn't it? Blue watch. There you go, Emma. See ya.
Alright, there it is.
Radio Brisbane.
Right there, refugees are not only in the kitchen but also at the helm, managing and serving customers. Producer Regina Botros went inside the kitchens and onto the streets.
Alright, it's working as it was. Now this is not an outstanding looking radio, but when I first picked it up, boy, it looked pretty dismal. But it's cleaned up nice and it's what it looked like 60 odd years ago. So well worth preserving, and yeah, I'm glad I've got it. I'll put it on the shelf with the rest of them. It's interesting that it doesn't have a dial light. I touched on it earlier. EKCO and most of the British manufacturers of hot chassis radios had the same trouble. The globes they used were very dull and they would burn out very easily. So maybe they just decided not to bother with it. It's a very bright looking dial, so maybe you can see it in a dull room. And as they worked out, most people don't change the stations very often anyway. They just stick to the one station. But I can imagine this in an English household and someone on Saturday afternoon listening to the football. I hope you enjoyed watching this radio being restored, and if you did, I hope you can join me for my next radio adventure.
Enrique to Maradona.
Different class! When they talked about the great players of World Championship football, this man will be on a pedestal. Diego Armando